Good afternoon, students. Now, study we have studied about the uh, role of Amar Nayak in the Vijayanagar Empire. We know very well that they were the military commanders. Understand? Or they functioned as a iqtidar who were functioning under the Sultanate states under the during the Sultanate period as the similar functioned and the work they did. And the moreover, students, you have already studied now these Nayaks, Amar Nayak maintained their own contingents, small contingents, and they had been assigned the lands by the kings, and they maintained the army. And whenever the king was required, they helped the king in the battlefield. We have seen that, and this kind of the a feudal system that like the feudal system in Europe, understand, was prevalent in the medieval or the medieval age. So similarly, these were these state similarly the Amar Nayak functioned, understand, or they sometimes they raised their rebellions against the king, understand, or they challenged the king, and they made their contribution in the maintaining the law and order of the states Vijayanagar Empire, or as well as they had also functioned, they had also maintained the law and order, fortified their area or their states, or a or fortified maintain the law and order, understand, and ultimately they supplicated, or a now they expressed their subordination, express their loyalty in the king's court. Is annually they sent the tributes to the king, understand, whatever they collected, and the gifts and tributes to the king, and try to please the king. And sometimes the king used to make their transfer, understand, transfer as a authority. The king say sometimes expressed his authority by transferring these Amar Nayaks from the one states to the other states, or these Amar Nayaks they also contributed in the construction of the temples and the other structures. We have seen that. Now, students, today we shall now begin the capital city of the and the environments of the Vijayanagar Empire. The capital city and the most like the most capitals, Vijayanagar characterized by a distinctive physical layout and the buildings or the building styles. This was the now one thing is that we know the Vijayanagar, the capitals of the Vijayanagar Empire, the capital, it was the capital cities also, or now this was now no doubt situated in the most arid zones. So the a great the big issues of the Vijayanagar Empire was to how to make the arrangement of the water. And this now we know that this Vijayanagar's capital city was the fortified city, understand, and under this the confinement of the fortification and forts, the agricultural work also done. So for the agriculture, for the water was required, the constant and abundant water was required for the for these agricultural purpose, and as well as for the forest, and as well as for the water for the city dwellers. For the urban core the water was required, and the now another core they had the temples core, the temples area. So now the water management was the very crucial for the Vijayanagar Empire or the Vijayanagar capital, because it was the arid and the rugged zone. understand, or a or it was surrounded by the hills, or by the small hills, understand. So that's why being as a hilly area, understand, or a moreover the hilly area, it was the more difficult to how to manage, but it was a their water management was very much excellent, and the main source of water for the Vijayanagar city was the Tungabhadra rivers, understand, and the other lakes of these small hills and the Tungabhadra rivers became the most abundant or the most effective source of the water management and the waters. The most striking features, the location of Vijayanagar is the natural basin form. It was the Vijayanagar Empire, its situation was a natural basin form. Understand? Natural basins. Now the where the rivers now becomes the not so rivers becomes slower in its flow, understand, and basin form by the river Tungabhadra, understand. Now it was the just cities, it is structure was that it was just like the basin form for the Tungabhadra rivers, and which flows in the north easterly. On the map you can see it, this Tungabhadra river, you can see that the flows in the northeasterly direction, in the north and the easterly direction, this now flows, and as a and the surrounding landscape is characterized by stunning granite hills, or its surroundings of this Vijayanagar capital city, understand, was a stunning granite landscape, was a stunning granite hill that seemed to form a girdle around the city, understand, all where in the to the around its form a girdle around it. A number of streams flow down, a number of streams flow down the flow down to the river from these rocky outcrops, from these rocky outcrops a number of lakes now, or cascade, or the lakes fallen into the Tungabhadra rivers. So now this was a very outstanding or the natural landscapes, understand, and moreover almost the all cases embankments were built to show in all cases of this flowing water, understand, or the lakes around, or it's on its alongside, the it was embanked, were built along these streams to create the reservoirs. The banks area, the embankment was done by to create the reservoirs for the water collections and the water reserve of the varying sizes. Some water reserves were very big, reservoirs were some were small. Understand, according to the topographical situation. And here at this as this is the one of the most arid zones of the peninsula, elaborate arrangements had to be made to store the rainwater, because I have already mentioned that this zone Vijayanagar city was a very arid zone. So that's why the water reservoirs were the one of the most crucial issues. Why? To provide the water for the irrigations, understand, required the water, and as well as the meeting the water requirements of the urban courts and the city dwellers, understand. So the water reservoir was the very arrangements was made to store the rainwater. Elaborate arrangements have been made to store the rain water now, and moreover and had to be the made to store rainwater, or the conduct itself, or conduct it to the cities, and then after it was drawn to the cities. Moreover, most important such tanks was built in the early years of the 15th century. Okay, early years of 15th century, and it is now called the Kamlapuram tank. one of the most important or the remarkable tank was made. That tank is known as the Kamalapuram tank. Understand? And it was now built during the Sangam dynasty, during the rulers of the Sangam dynasty, at the sorry during the irrigated water from the tank, not only irrigated field nearby, and this tank Kamla Kamlapuram tank now was used for the watering the used for the watering the adjacent area and the irrigated field nearby, but also the conducted through a channel to the royal center, and through a channel the Kamlapuram water tanks, okay, water was now brought and whatever was the drained, understand, to the urban and the royal centers for the requirements of the royals and the centers. The water was brought from the Kamlapuram tanks. Understand? So in this way, the water arrangements become the most challenging arrangements of the managements for the Vijayanagar empire, and one most prominent waterworks to be seen among the ruins of the Hirya canals, and one can see that in the along the Hirya canals, the most effective Hirya canal. This canal drew water from a dam. The water in the Hirya canals was from the dam from the Tungbhadra rivers. There was a dam on the Tungbhadra, and from that dams the water was brought to the Hirya canals, and and they irrigated the cultivated valley. And this water, through this water, the cultivated valleys was thoroughly irrigated, that separate the sacred centers, and that irrigated valleys or the area now separate the sacred center from urban core, sacred centers, and the agricultural fields. And this was the apparently built by the kings of the Sangam dynasty, and particularly the kings of Sangam dynasty. They have now prepared the Hirya canals. Understand? And this was the one of their outstanding water management by these Sangam rulers. Okay. Moreover, now let's say students, we shall come to the next topics, that is the road system. Okay, the road system we are going to see here, fortification and the road system. This was another outstanding features of the Vijayanagar Empire. Understand? Or since the Vijayanagar Empire was surrounded by the and had the great menace of the attacks always involved in the battles, in the battle against the Sultan, Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Bijapur, Golconda, Bidar, Berar. Understand? These states were the enemy states of the Vijayanagar Empire. And Vijayanagar Empire for a long time involved, understand, in the battle, and had to be the face the long and the swords battle. Understand? So it was very necessary for the empires to design the very strong forts and the outstanding. This kind of the forts we don't find in the any dynasty or the in the history of the so far we have gone. Such kind of the fortification we don't have find in the history of the world, or whether in the history of India. As the Vijayanagar fortification, such fortifications we rare, and we don't find. As far I have gone, this kind of the arrangements we don't find anywhere. Now the fortification and the road system of the Vijayanagar Empire. First, we know the cities. Let's say city was enclosed by the great fortress wall. Understand? Entire city, Vijayanagar city's wall, it was enclosed by the great fortress wall, and as the Abdul Razak, who was the Persian ambassador who visited to the Vijayanagar Empire in the 15th century, and he was extremely impressed by the fortification. And Abdul Razak, who was a Persian ambassador, who visited the Vijayanagar Empire, and this man was the extremely influenced by the Vijayanagar's arrangements or the Vijayanagar cities. Now, the first he mentions that according to what he saw, he now made his own accounts and the written or in this. Now, the Vijayanagar 7 lines of the forts. He mentions that in the cities had the 7 lined forts. Understand? Forts. Second, these encircled city or these 7 line forts encircled the cities. What a huge arrangements they had made. We don't find in the history. And those encircled the city. These 7 lined forts now 7 line forts now encircle the cities, and also it's agricultural hinterland. Now Vijayanagar Empire, it is the very miracle or a startle things or stunning that now under the fort and the fort wall, understand, under the fort wall they had the Vijayanagar Empire had its own hinterland for the agricultural purpose. Understand? Now, because they were, this city had not to be the dependent on the outside of the world for the requirements of the grains. Understand? The so arrangements was made under the within the forts. A vast stretch of the lands had been spared for the cultivation and for the agriculture. Second thing, it's agricultural hinterland and the forest, and as well as not only the hinterland agriculture, but the forest lands was also stretched there. And outmost wall linked the if you the outmost wall, understand, the outmost wall linked the hills surrounding the city. Outmost wall, understand, the now surrounded the just the bordering wall, the outskirt wall, we can say outskirt of the city's wall. Now they were adjacent, the surrounding linked the hills surrounding the city. Understand? Linked outward wall was the linked with the hills. Understand? And these cities was surrounded by the hills. Or here, and the massive masonry construction was slightly or tempered walls. Understand? Slightly tempered. We can say the massive masonry construction was slightly tempered. No mortar, no any mortar. Understand? To make the stones clinked together and cemented together used here. This was the features of that. And the cementing agent was employed. No any cementing agent was employed. And the wear in the construction, no cementing any elements was now employed in this for the cementing and for the making more consolidated, no any. And the stone blocks, the big stone blocks were raised means flat. Understand? Raised and flat, raised shaped, flat shaped, which held them in the place. The flat shaped boulder stones, big stones now just cling together. That the held together. Understand? And moreover, in the place the stone blocks were raised and the set together. The inner portions of the wall, the wall, outer portion or the inner portion. Let's see the inner portion of the wall. Walls was earth packed. It was the earthen packed with the rubbles. Understand? Earthen packed with the rubbles. It was just a rubbles and earthen packed plaster, we can say. Understand? This was the, and a square or the rectangular basins projected outward. The square or the rectangular basins projected outwards. The most significant about this fortification is that the most significant and the outstanding fortifications of these cities was the it enclosed the agricultural tracts. Most outstanding was that this vast enclosed the agricultural tracts or the agricultural field. Understand the most striking features. Second, according to the as the Abdul Razak, who had now made the account about that and they spoke between the first to the second, between first wall and the second, fourth wall, between that second and the third walls, there are the cultivated fields. First first wall, second wall, and the third wall. So there were the between that the cultivated fields and the now and the gardens and the houses. There were gardens and the houses. Okay. Next day, or the according to the Domingo Pius, understand, who also visited the Vijayanagar Empire. Understand, Domingo Pius, according to this visitors were that from this first circuit, okay, until you enter the city from this first circuit, understand, or until the enter your city, there is a great distance from first circuit to the enter in the inner part of the cities. It's had the very great distance because the it was lands where the three at the three walls, okay, between the three walls the lands were so straight lands, so it was natural that the inner core of the cities were the very far away the main gates and the main entrance gates. So this was the and from this great distance in which are the fields in which the fields they sow the rice. They used to sow the rice and have many gardens, rice gardens, and much water. Water was also arranged there, in which water now comes from the two lakes, or in which the waters I have already mentioned. The through the lakes, understand, through the hills, the lakes were flowing towards this, and these understand. So the through the two lakes, water, abundant water was just came there. Those statements have been these now we see that these statements have been elaborated by the present day archaeologist, or now these statements which the Abdul Razak or the Pius has made have been elaborated. They have the further. We have also found evidence of the agricultural tracts. The modern historians and the modern agriculturists also agree with the accounts of the Pius and the Abdul Razak. Understand? They completely agreed and expressed their agreements. And now agricultural tracts between the sacred center and the urban core. Between the urban core and the sacred centers, understand, there was a vast and the large tracts of the land there. They have to elaborate urban core. This tract was serviced by the elaborate canal, and this was the now watered by the elaborate canal system, drawing water from the Tungabhadra, and this elaborate water system, the water was drawing from the Tungabhadra rivers. Okay, the now students, this outstanding fortifications and the road system was no elsewhere in the history we find. Understand? Or moreover, why do we think agricultural tracts were incorporated within the fortification? One thing is that here the many questions arises and comes in your mind. Many questions come in your mind that why such kind of the fortification had been made. Understand? The students now Since the ancient time or the medieval time, understand the fortification, the fashions of the fortification, not the fashion, the compulsory and the necessity of the forts were realized. Understand? Now, even the Kautilya, if you study the Kautilya Arthashastra, in the Kautilya Arthashastra, the Kautilya has written about the water forts, the features of the now, just like the Patliputra. Understand? Patliputra was just like a water fort because it is surrounded by all by the rivers, all from all sides. Understand? It is almost the surrounded by the rivers. So it is the called as the water fort. Okay. So now to make the defense of the country, of the any country or the any state or kingdoms, the forts played the very important role, because if the forts were seized and the if forts were surrendered, understand, then that state was supposed to be the get the defeat and accept the defeat. So as long as the forts were not surrendered, not demolished and taken under control, so that state was not to be the supposed to be the under the control of the enemy or the invaders. Why? In the forts, understand, huge amount of the stacks stacks of the grains were put, the water management was done, whatever was arranged. Why? And the fort gates were closed when the enemy encircled or besieged the forts. Understand? So as long as in the medieval times we have the many of the instances, as long as the battle went on, understand, or the sultans and the other invaders, they try to capture the forts, but as the king, along with his citizens and as well as the important people, enclosed himself, understand, or enclosed himself, understand, and shut himself into the fort. So it becomes the very difficult for the enemies to make them and to compel them for the surrender. It was very difficult. As long as the stacks of the grains in the within the fort, understand, or the water management within the fort now went on or the survived so long, the kings did not surrender. Understand? So now here the forts, but the Vijayanagar and the one thing the enemies always used to try. They tried to cut off the supply of the commodities for the when the king now starts say along with his subjects or along with his army under that under the fort, and the supply, the main target of the invaders is the how to cut off the supply. So if the supplies cut off, so then the kings had to be the surrender. Understand, by the 1, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, or the years. As their supply is cut off, then they have to be the surrender ultimately. So now the Vijayanagar Empire was quite different in this sense. Now the Alauddin Khilji or the others say, understand, many instances we have that. They first of all they tried how to enter into the fort. What are the how much resources are under the control of the king or under the stacks of the under the control of the king within the fort, how much grains are there, how many peoples are there, army is there, how long their grain will survive, grain will grain will survive. Understand? Okay, grain will be there, stocks will retains and contain, or the water where how the water is supplied. So these enemies now try to cut off the water supply, try to cut off their commodities, supplies of the commodities to make the surrender. But the Vijayanagar Empire, understand, and emperors had had thought differently. They thought differently. Now they, as they enclosed it, even the hinterland, and there was no questions of the sortings of the grains. They were shut in the forts. It was very difficult. How to cut up? They have the natural water flow, understand, water supply, and as well as the grains hinterland within the fort, within the boundary. So it was the too difficult for the aggressors to make them the surrender. So this was the question. That is why, from viewpoint of defense, understand, or the from the viewpoint of the seas, understand, this fort was the outstanding fort that we don't find in the history. Even the hinterland, the grain supply, for the grain supply, this empire never depended on the others. Understand? So here we see the students. So why do we think agriculture tracts were incorporated within the objective of the medieval siege fort encircling to starve the defenders. Understand? To starve the defenders into the submission. Understand? Starve the defenders to the submission, and these sieges could last for several months and sometimes even the years. So the uh, as long as the stacks remain stacks, understand, stack not sorted, so long the kings were not going to surrender. Understand? So now here we can see that these sieges, sometimes even the years, normally rulers tried to be the prepared for such situation. Normally the rulers tried to, by the building the large granaries. Generally the rulers say escape and protect their forts and their kingdoms. They now built the large granary which in the fortified area. Large granary were that established. The Vijayanagar ruler adopted a more expensive and the elaborate strategy. More expensive. Now the walling construction of the walls around so in the so vast diameter, it was the very expensive and the elaborate strategy of protecting the agricultural belt itself. Understand, agricultural belt itself. Now we know that even the Alauddin Khilji attack on the Rajasthan, understand, or where what he did. First of all, he tried, understand, his army tried to tried to destroy the crops, understand, and waited in which year the crops had not yielded well, not produced well. So that year was supposed to be the very good very good years and the good years for the invaders. Now the kings were in sort of the grains, and they could not restore the grains for long, understand, and for the such situation and meeting the such conditions. Under these conditions, the enemies got the good opportunity to achieve and to make the conquest over the such a force, strong force. Understand? So now here we see that these were the for this strategy the forts used to be the constructed by the kings, understand, but the Vijayanagar went in a different way and adopted the rulers adopted a different strategy for the defending of this great city, because they were encircled with the enemies. All were from all sides, they were encircled by the enemy, Deccan sultans and the now Gajpati rulers okay, or uh, in the southern border of their, in the southern borders, the deep and the far southern rulers, they were the great menace for the Vijayanagar kings. Now students, we have seen so far. Next thing is that the second line of the fortification, the second line, first line fortification went now went resents the inner core of the urban complex. Now the second line, understand, heading towards the inner core, inner core of the urban complex. It's now leads towards that, and now third line surrounded the royal centers. Third now surrounded the royal centers, means the kings, within which each set of the major buildings was surrounded by its own high walls, and third the third line surrounded the royal centers, or these each buildings within the royal centers, each building was itself surrounded by its own walls. Understand? So strong, under the so strong fortification, the kings and the royals of the Vijayanagar kings and the kings and the royals lived in the in such a strong confinements they lived. One thing is that the gateways. Let's come to the gateways, students. Or the fort was now entered through the well guarded gates. One thing, the all the around it was encircled. Fort was, and the one gate. Understand? It was the guarded gates. Understand? There were guards there, maybe the guards there, and which linked the city to the major roads. And this gate, the main gates now linked the major roads. From there, major roads were leading inside the uh, inside the forts, and the moreover gateways were distinctive architectural, and these gateways were the very distinctive architecture made of the, and the many in the designs and architects features that often define the structures to which they were regulated access. And now these structures were the very well defined structures, or defined to which they regulated access. Understand? Moreover, the arc on the gateways. Understand? There were the arc on the gateways leading into the fortified settlements. The arc of the gateway leading into the fortified settlements, as well as the domes over the gate. There was a domes over the gate, are regarded of the typical features of the architecture. Over these gates there were the domes, and this was the another typical features of the architectures, or introduced by the just a Turkish Sultanate. And this domes had been taken from the and copied from the Turkish sultans. Understand? So here we see that in the this Vijayanagar Hindu states, we find the architectural features in the Islamic features in the architecture of the gates and the architecture of the structures. Understand? That these were the very much definings, and moreover, the arc on the gateway leading into the fortification sultan. Art historians, some of the historians who are the specific in the art, and this style as the Indo-Islamic, or the some historians now term this these gates are the made and constructed in the Indo-Islamic structure. It means that the admixture of the Indo or the Islamic structure, Indian structure and the Islamic structure. These gates had been So we see that there was an impact of the Sultanate, impact of the Deccan Sultans on the structure of the Vijayanagar or Hindu Empire. So we can see this now gives the picture that how the Hindu structures was influenced by the Muslim structure, and manywhere we see manywhere or the elsewhere we see that the Hindu structure now influenced immediately to the Islamic structure. So now a process of the assimilations of the two arts and the Hindu or Indo-Islamic art was in the process or in the progression. Moreover, as it grew continually through the interaction with the local buildings, okay, in the local buildings, also this kind of the interaction we find, and the practices in the different regions, and as well as this kind of the practices and the building makings, the assimilation of the Islamic and the Hindu culture or the Hindu structures now was going on at a very local regions or the local level. Okay, here students we see another thing is that uh, today we shall stop here. Next, the other systems still we have to the, uh, discuss about that in the next video. Thank you very much.